Hey there everyone and welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about Black Torch Chapter 2, The Choice is Yours. So the cover page of this chapter is Jiro and Rango having a mugshot taken of them, and I just wanted to throw this out there, but Jiro's height is like 6'9". Bro's pretty tall. That's kind of, I thought that was pretty funny. So, anyways, moving on to the chapter. First, we start off with Jiro in his inner world, and he's kind of recalling everything that was going on up until he sees Rango in his inner world, and this kind of solidifies that like they're both one and the same now, as they're both in Jiro's mind. So he wakes up, and the girl from last chapter is sitting there, and kind of calls her boss, telling him that like, hey, Jiro's waking up. And we see Rango kind of manifest in a form. It's not like his physical cat. He's still a cat. But we see him on top of Jiro's head, and it's not like he's now a cat. It's more like an aura and representing himself as a cat. So they're both surprised that Jiro is there, of course, and the head of the Bureau of Espionage comes by. Well, he's the captain, of course. So he talks about him being the Bureau of Espionage, and his name is Shiba. And the girl's name, of course, is Ichika, so it's great that we both have names for them. And they start talking about an organization, I'm going to butcher this name, but the Oniwaba Nushu. I believe that's how you say it. Anyways, moving on. So Jiro says he knows what it is, and Shiba makes fun of him, saying like, hey, I never thought you would actually know what they are. And Jiro kind of takes it as an insult, as he knows that they're an organization run by the shogun that was employed during the Edo period. Shiba does confirm that, and he does talk about how it is in the current day and age as the Bureau of Espionage, and that their main job is intelligence and information gathering by both domestic and internationally, so they can surveillance and eliminate Mononoke. They were doing this, and in the facility they had sealed Rango. However, Rango did escape, and they asked Jiro like, hey, how did you and Rango become like this? And Jiro, of course, does tell him what had happened, and Ichika was like, what in the world were you doing? You saved a Mononoke. Are you insane? And Shiba kind of takes this more of a joking matter. He's like, oh my god, what am I going to write in this report? Like, this is just insane. And kind of gets more serious and tells Jiro like, hey, you know what? This condition of yours is now permanent. You're an adult now, and you're not a kid. This is the responsibility you need to take for your own actions. So they both leave, and they're being guarded. We get a panel of 2 guards outside of his hospital bed. We can only assume that they're in the facility of the Bureau of Espionage, and he's just being guarded at the moment. So Jiro kind of thinks to himself, he's like, damn, am I ever going to see Gramps again? And Rango kind of butts in. He's like, hey, I told you shouldn't have been dealing with me. You should have just left me alone. And Jiro kind of takes that in the wrong way. He's like, hey, are you going to start lecturing me again? And he doesn't really care, Jiro. It just, as the nature of his character is, he just likes to help people. And so he decides that he's going to escape with Rango. And Rango's like, how are you gonna do that? And Joe's like, I think you forgot, I have my own abilities. So he sees some crows outside. I can only assume that these are the same crows he helped in the first chapter. And he calls upon the crows, and the guards outside hear a ruckus going on. And as they come inside, Jiro gets the crows to attack them, and he runs out. And afterwards, the crows catch up to Jiro outside in some type of bridge. And Jiro does give them food. He's like, hey, here's the food I promised. And he goes back home, basically. And when he goes back home, he sees his grandfather. And grandfather's like, hey, you're "Hey, trespasser," and Jiro tries to talk to his grandfather, but his grandfather kind of just shoots him down and says, "Hey, zip it and follow me." So they go to this little area. I don't think this is close to the house, because you see it's kind of more like a track and field type of area. Like, you see the bleachers and like the tracks, and grandfather kind of just smacks the hell out of Jiro, sends him flying, and he tells him, he's like, "I know everything that you've done. You're now possessed by a Mononoke. Shiba told me everything." And Jiro's confused. He's like, "How do you know all about this?" And grandfather says, he's like, "I'm a former member of the Bureau of Espionage." And he's like, "You're kidding me, right?" And Rango kind of shows up, and he's like, "Oh shoot, like this is awkward." And grandfather's like, "Oh, so you're Rango? How dare you possess my grandson?" And he gets in the stance. He gets all serious, and he's like, "I'm gonna kill you, and I'm gonna kill Rango, and I'm gonna take my own life right afterwards," right? So these grandfather just starts throwing hands. Like, it's a one-sided massacre. There's no way Jiro's gonna be able to beat this guy. So he goes after Jiro. He makes him start bleeding out, and Rango tries to help Jiro out by getting like a cat claw and smacking grandfather's attacks away. And Jiro trying to just grabs the black. So the cat claw is made out of black aura, and Jiro grabs the claw and kind of just swipes it away. So then afterwards we get a little flashback, and he kind of, Tsuyoshi kind of does this like how Kubo does it, where he kind of blacks out the gutters in like the background, just to show, like, this is a flashback. So the flashback starts with Jiro trying to save a cat, and he falls down a tree, but thankfully grandfather comes and saves him. He's like, what are you trying to do, right? And Jiro tries to justify his actions. He's like, "Hey, this cat was helpless. I was the only person who can take it down." And grandfather, he says a quote, and I'm gonna come back to this quote afterwards. He says, "If you lack strength, it's reckless. If you lack resolve, it's irresponsible," right? So then grandfather tells Jiro, "Hey, become strong in both mind and body. If you do that, then you'll surely be able to climb any tree, no matter how tall it is." Because Jiro started climbing the tree to save the cat. So then afterwards, we kind of cut back to the present. It's not gutted black anymore, but we see grandfather, and we also see Nachi, which I thought that was pretty surprising, fighting a Mononoke, right? And so going back to the quote, what grandfather was saying, "If you lack strength, it's reckless. If you lack resolve, it's irresponsible." What I got from that was, he is telling a child to be strong, basically, and telling him this quote, like, "Hey, you have to have resolve. You have to have strength," basically, right? And in this world, where there's Mononoke, you also have to have strength and resolve, right? To kill these beings, even though they may not be good things, you still need it. You still need to kill these things, because as life goes on and you get older, things don't become as black and white as you are as a child. And I felt that was really great representation of our own lives as we get older. Some things do get less black and white and they become more gray. I felt that was really beautiful, in my opinion, as grandfather does go on and say, he's like, that shadowy world where the light of the sun doesn't reach, that is the world I lived in, basically. As he's an older man, he's a man who's a lot older, he doesn't live in that black and white world anymore. And he didn't want that greatness of a world to be in his grandson's world, basically. And he's tried his hardest to fight in order so Jiro doesn't have to live in that world. Jiro, on the other hand, kind of rebuts that, and he's like, "I'll make things right in my own way. That is my own resolve." He has strength. He has his own resolve. Grandfather doesn't really take that all too well, and he goes and attacks him one more time. Rango at this point, he's actually a little more distraught. He's like, oh shoot, like he's gonna actually kill him. So we get a full spread cover page where Jiro and Grandfather kind of clash, but Jiro uses his head while Grandfather tries to punch him basically. And surprisingly, Jiro's still standing. And even Rango is like, damn, you're invincible basically. Grandfather still says like, hey, don't get cocky with me, you're still half a man. And Jiro tries to have another conversation with Grandfather. He's like, hey, you know what, I have this guy over here beside me helping me out. The guy he's referring to is Rango. And Grandfather kind of just realizes, he's like, it doesn't matter who it is, animal, human, or Mononoke, Jiro treats everybody equally, basically. And Grandfather kind of says, you know what, you win. It looks like I'm the one who lacked resolve. And basically, moving on towards the last part of the chapter, we see Rango and Jiro just taking a bath together, and they're just talking amongst themselves, kind of coming to a mutual understanding, while Rango's trying to say like, hey, don't rush to your own death. If you need me, I'll lend you my powers, basically. And Jiro kind of says like, hey, thanks for all of that, and that sounds pretty good, partner. And that kind of comes to the end of the chapter, basically. It was a good chapter. It really goes along with the title, The Choice Is Yours, as Jiro is now making his own choices in life, trying to figure out where he wants to go with his own path in life, basically, and not going along with what his grandfather wanted to do, keeping him away in a world where the light, doesn't shine, basically. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you in chapter 3 of Black Torch. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you another time. Take care.